It has greatly increased in significance over the last few years during this pandemic era. And so when we reflect on the word death and the death stage, it has this connotation of great sadness and loss and grief. But what does death or the death stage truly mean in its definition? Death, or when someone dies, means that a person is no longer living or breathing and has lost total state of consciousness. And so as their body lies lifeless, we can no longer communicate with them. Now, as we reflect on this, we see that for many of us, during this way of living and this conditioning, we have been conditioned to reflect on death as great sadness and loss, as we feel like we could no longer communicate in the physical with our dear loved ones, friends, families, and just people here who have left. You see, during the death state, the soul is said to be taken up into another realm and does in fact live on through eternity. You see, even if, you know, we have lost a lot of our loved ones and, just many during this time, we see that they're simply living on, not in form, but into another realm, and their soul lives on through eternity, meaning that their essence still lives on. So, there are ways in which we could still reach out to them, even if they're not in form, as in, the great sleep stage, through our, senses or third eye, telepathic communication. There's so many other ways that you could still reach out to those who have gone, because the soul is an invisible essence that lives on through eternity. Now I can talk about death as I have, not just experienced death in previous lifetimes, but in this lifetime in my current form. You see, after being sick and going on forth doing surgeries, my soul indeed died. And so, as I was taken into another realm, my soul had an opportunity to either go forth into another realm or to continue living this life. And because my soul knew that I had so much more to accomplish during this lifetime in living out my life's purpose, my soul decided to come here for good. You see, the death stage is something that right now, so many, we're not talking about the literal physical death. We're just talking about the dyings of the soul's death. That during this time, during this awakening stage, because of so much going on, many during the awakening stage have another soul's death when we see that we go through the dark night of the soul. You see, during this time, your soul is often lost and searching for answers as to what is my true purpose of living. And so you now have to tell yourself, wow, it is simply a point where I'm shifting from my old version of myself into my new version of myself, to rebirth, my truest essence of purpose of what I'm here to do. Now, if we think of the physical death stage of the loss of our dear loved ones, friends, family, the great loss that we've experienced during this time, we can now tell ourselves that as much as it's been depicted as a loss and sadness and grief and pain, we see that we have lived many lifetimes and we have reincarnated into this lifetime, each and every one, to live out our purpose. Now, whether we choose to go forth and do it, that's up to us. But we can see now that our dear loved one who's passed on will get a chance to reincarnate and live out in another lifetime. And why is there gone in form? they're simply in another realm. And when you tap into your own form of consciousness, you could still communicate with them. So we now have to reflect and say, wow, the entire earth is sort of going through a death stage where the earth is evolving and shifting through one age of the Piscean age into another age. And whether it's the physical death or death of the dark night of the soul, or just, the rebirth of this earth, we now have to see a connotation of the death as death is letting go of the old, the dying of the old, and the bringing forth new life of the new. We have to now shift our perspective for looking at death with a connotation of sadness and grief and pain into one where we see that it's all about, birthing a new life. And oftentimes, because we like, the physical form aspect of everything, and we really hope that we could have our loved ones back in form, but they're still here in another realm, living through eternity, and they'll get another chance to be reincarnated into another form. So let's look at the death stage not so much as a loss or sadness. We now have to shift our perspective to say it's a way of birthing new, because it's so vital and important that we raise up from this lower grade and essence of looking at certain things. We no longer want to remain in the diminished versions of ourselves where, we stay at this minimum level. We have to raise our consciousness into higher perspectives. And if we are evolving and rising forth into this new era, we have to shift our perspective of everything, including this death stage, to be able to create and co-create with Mother Earth this new life here on Earth. One where we tap into all the dimensional frequencies of the other realms and still see that many who have gone their soul's essence is living. And even for us who's going through the awakening, and whilst it's a beautiful process, before we can truly be rebirthed into our most truest essence, we have to even go through the death stage. And usually it's a time of great pain, because we're searching for who we truly are, what we're truly here to do. And as much as that transition is sometimes tough, we see that once we get to the other side, it's the most beautiful thing that we've gone through. So I just want you to look more in depth at this death stage and transmute your whole perspective about it to see it as something beautifully orchestrated, to bring forth new life here. So much love, so much bliss, so much peace, so much harmony I bring forth in you as we go forth and co-create this new life here on Earth, letting go of the old versions of the death stage and seeing it as a way forward to bring forth